We live in an age where digital banking is quickly overtaking the traditional forms and becoming the primary point of access for so many of your customers. IdentityX is a modern, secure, biometric identity platform that gives your digital banking customers new, more convenient and secure ways to access their information and verify their identity online. Customers love biometrics because there's nothing to remember or carry around. They finally have easy access to their accounts. They can transfer funds with the blink of an eye, approve transactions directly on their phone, and authenticate anything without having to talk to the bank. IdentityX has been specifically designed with today's customer in mind, meaning it works with existing legacy systems as well as the modern mobile banking apps. Developed in consultation with local data protection regulators and approved by bank IT security, IdentityX offers seamless continuity in terms of how banking apps look and feel to their end users. Here at Dayon, we've secured hundreds of millions of identities in banking, insurance, travel, education, borders, and critical infrastructure around the world. And with IdentityX, we're bringing our decades of experience in biometric identity assurance directly to your customers. Contact us for a demo today and see how Dayon can transform your customer experience.
We live in an instant world where your customers want and expect to access new services instantly, even the ones that require proof of identity. Today, with IdentityX from Dayon, identity proofing and onboarding those new customers is simple, seamless, and, yes, instant. Whether they've just downloaded a new mobile app or want to sign up directly from their web browser, they simply grab a form of ID that's handy, snap some photos of the document, and then a selfie. That's it. Now they can use their face to sign in every time. Because unlike most ID proofing tools that waste the personal information they collect, IdentityX moves your customers from onboarding to authentication instantly. Of course, this speed is only possible with some strong security behind the scenes, where machine learning algorithms are confirming the authenticity of the ID document using a range of verification techniques, matching the selfie to the document image and using liveness detection to prevent spoofing with a photo or video recording, comparing the selfie to a biometric watch list of known or suspected fraudsters, and cross-referencing identity data from pre-integrated third-party tools. It's powerful security and KYC AML compliance, but it all happens instantly, so you'll get lower abandonment rates and happier customers. IdentityX by Dayon. Identity proofing and onboarding for an instant world.
Support users worldwide. This has forced organizations to rethink how and where to distribute data. Developers of these applications require a database that is fast, supports transactions, and can scale up or down without incurring downtime. This has led organizations to deploy multiple SQL, NoSQL, and caching databases to meet their technical requirements. The result of this database sprawl has led to increased costs, more complex operations, and slower feature velocity. What if there was a database that could help you consolidate by delivering high-performance transactional NoSQL and planet-scale SQL in a single system? Say hello to Yugabyte DB, an open-source database created by the engineers who built and scaled Facebook's NoSQL platforms. With our proven sharding and replication architecture, you don't have to choose between consistency, availability, or performance. When compared to NoSQL systems like Cassandra, Yugabyte DB is 3 times faster at consistent reads and can deliver 6 times the data density per node. Traditional RDBMSs support ACID transactions, but even these systems cannot deliver distributed transactions or global data distribution without complicated replication architectures. Yugabyte DB can do all of this and more, supporting JSON documents, distributed ACID transactions, and secondary indexes. Yugabyte DB is purpose-built for global data distribution, automatically rebalancing nodes across availability zones or geo-distributed regions up or down without downtime or performance bottlenecks. And because Yugabyte is multi-API and multi-cloud, it's compatible with PostgreSQL, Cassandra, and Redis and can run in any cloud, container, or data center. Ready for a database that can reduce costs, simplify operations, and help deliver projects faster? Visit us online to learn how.
We started way back in 2001. We pioneered open source here in the Philippines with over 2 decades of experience, over 150 software developers.
We do a lot of application modernization work, transforming the legacy systems into a more modern, more scalable, more flexible systems that are more future-proof.
At Exist, we help our clients in their systems selection and their digital implementation of their digital strategy by way of doing consulting and innovative technology solutions. We bring to the table a unique insight, a different perspective, and create value for our clients. Long term, we regard us as their innovation partners. Industries such as banking and finance, healthcare, and retail, together with the client, actually do innovative stuff, new stuff to offer to the market.
Why companies would choose us, I would say that we strongly value our customers, treat them as partners, and as such we take great pride in being able to deliver quality software to our clients.
Over the years, we've managed to also help in terms of being able to develop as well as exit certain companies using open source software.
We've been around 18 years, so we have a very good amount of experience in terms of this type of business.
A distributed engineering network wherein we're able to build software 24-hour clock.
We will not let you down if you choose us.
We live in an age where digital banking is quickly overtaking the traditional forms and becoming the primary point of access for so many of your customers. IdentityX is a modern, secure, biometric identity platform that gives your digital banking customers new, more convenient, and secure ways to access their information and verify their identity online. Customers love biometrics because there's nothing to remember or carry around. They finally have easy access to their accounts. They can transfer funds with the blink of an eye, approve transactions directly on their phone, and authenticate anything without having to talk to the bank. IdentityX has been specifically designed with today's customer in mind, meaning it works with existing legacy systems, as well as the modern mobile banking apps. Developed in consultation with local data protection regulators and approved by bank IT security, IdentityX offers seamless continuity in terms of how banking apps look and feel to their end users. Here at Dayon, we've secured hundreds of millions of identities in banking, insurance, travel, education, borders, and critical infrastructure around the world. And with IdentityX, we're bringing our decades of experience in biometric identity assurance directly to your customers. Contact us for a demo today and see how Dayon can transform your customer experience.
We live in an instant world where your customers want and expect to access new services instantly, even the ones that require proof of identity. Today, with IdentityX from Dayon, Identity proofing and onboarding those new customers is simple, seamless, and yes, instant. Whether they've just downloaded a new mobile app or want to sign up directly from their web browser, they simply grab a form of ID that's handy, snap some photos of the document, and then a selfie. That's it. Now they can use their face to sign in every time. Because unlike most ID proofing tools that waste the personal information they collect, Identity X moves your customers from onboarding to authentication instantly. Of course, this speed is only possible with some strong security behind the scenes, where machine learning algorithms are confirming the authenticity of the ID document using a range of verification techniques, matching the selfie to the document image and using liveness detection to prevent spoofing with a photo or video recording, comparing the selfie to a biometric watch list of known or suspected fraudsters, and cross-referencing identity data from pre-integrated third-party tools. It's powerful security and KYC AML compliance, but it all happens instantly, so you'll get lower abandonment rates and happier customers. Identity X by Dayon. Identity proofing and onboarding for an instant world.
Applications need to support users worldwide. This has forced organizations to rethink how and where to distribute data. Developers of these applications require a database that is fast, supports transactions, and can scale up or down without incurring downtime. This has led organizations to deploy multiple SQL, NoSQL, and caching databases to meet their technical requirements. The result of this database sprawl has led to increased costs, more complex operations, and slower feature velocity. What if there was a database that could help you consolidate by delivering high-performance transactional NoSQL and planet-scale SQL in a single system? Say hello to Yugabyte DB, an open-source database created by the engineers who built and scaled Facebook's NoSQL platforms. With our proven sharding and replication architecture, you don't have to choose between consistency, availability, or performance. When compared to NoSQL systems like Cassandra, Yugabyte DB is 3 times faster at consistent reads and can deliver 6 times the data density per node. Traditional RDBMSs support ACID transactions, but even these systems cannot deliver distributed transactions or global data distribution without complicated replication architectures. Yugabyte DB can do all of this and more, supporting JSON documents, distributed ACID transactions, and secondary indexes. Yugabyte DB is purpose-built for global data distribution, automatically rebalancing nodes across availability zones or geo-distributed regions up or down without downtime or performance bottlenecks. And because Yugabyte is multi-API and multi-cloud, it's compatible with PostgreSQL, Cassandra, and Redis and can run in any cloud, container, or data center. Ready for a database that can reduce costs, simplify operations, and help deliver projects faster? Visit us online to learn how.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fast Track Digital Banking Trends in the Post Pandemic Era. This event is hosted by Exist Software Labs Inc. in partnership with Dayon and Yugabyte, and of course, our media partners, Fintechna and Malaya Business Insights. I'm Jem, your moderator for today. So, to officially welcome everyone to this event, I would like to call in the President and CEO of Exist Software Labs Inc., Mr. Michael Lim. Hi, Sir Mike. Can you open your video cam?
There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Thank you, Jim, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this event. You guys did a great job organizing the event, and I also would like to thank our my fellow panelists for joining us today. I'm looking forward to have a great discussion with you and be able to share your thoughts, your insights around the trends in digital banking. And of course, to all the participants today, thank you for taking time this afternoon in joining us in this event today, this afternoon. And we're all excited to be able to share with you again our thoughts and insights around the trends and the existing technologies and practices in digital banking. And we're very, very excited to be able to share that with you guys and to hear about your thoughts, also your opinions and some of your questions around it. So I'm looking forward to it. And again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sir Mike, for that welcome remarks. And of course, to start the ball rolling, we will now open the first topic for this event, which is called Post Pandemic Digital Banking Innovations. So I would like to invite the following to join us on stage. So, first, from Robinson's Bank, SVP and Digital Retail Banking Group Head, Mr. Ramon Abasolo. Sir Mon? Okay, so we're just having some technical difficulties. We'll just call back in Sermon later. Let's call in first the Chief Operations Officer of PBCom, Mr. John Howard Medina. Hi, Sir John. Okay, and to complete the panelist for this first topic, I would like to call in the Financial Services Lead of Microsoft, Basudev Banerjee. Hi, Basu. Hi, Sir John. Can you please open your camera and your audio? There you go. Hi, Sir
Hi, good
John. Hi,
afternoon.
Basu. Good
Hi, good
afternoon,
afternoon.
everyone. Is Sir Mon Abasolo on the call? Okay. So we'll just add Sir Mon later when he's already available. But to start the questions for the post pandemic digital banking innovations topic, the first question that I would like to address, Sir John, is what are the new innovations that the public can expect from digital banking?
Well, there are many. Uh, Everybody's doing something different, but they're always on along the lines of onboarding customers, facilitating payments, and offering services online that are normally not there.
Okay, sir.
So
Um,
every institution has something different, but they're all along the same flavors.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir John, for that input. How about you, Sir Mon? Can you share with us your insights about the new digital innovations in the banking sector?
Yeah, the innovations really have started to kick in because during the pandemic, um, a lot of we found a lot of customers because of the lockdown couldn't get to the branches, so we had to figure out ways to service them during the pandemic time. So the thing is, we were preparing ourselves really to be digital. Then the pandemic happened, so we really had to accelerate it. All of our infra and all of our skills and all of our processes were tested at that time. So we really had to become agile at that moment.
Okay. And I would also like to confirm, Sir John and Sir Mon, is banking as a service, open banking, or platform banking part of the innovations that we can expect moving forward?
Well, they're not so much the innovations, but they're the
Mm-hmm.
frameworks by which innovation can happen. So
Mm-hmm.
platform banking is exposing it's somewhat related to open banking and banking as a
Mm-hmm.
service, where you expose services for partners like our
Mhm.
retail conglomerates to expose financial services of the bank to their customers. So it's not so much that those are the innovations, but they will allow us to innovate together with the different industries.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Noted. How about you,
Yeah, I
Basu?
agree also with that.
Thank you,
Yep.
Sir John and Sir
Go
Mon.
ahead, go ahead.
I would also like to get the opinion of one of our panelists, Basu, on the digital innovations on the banking sector. Hi, Basu. Can you please share us your insight about this?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Jim. Uh, I would echo what John and Simon said. It is not only innovations; it is more about new way of doing the old job. So, because
Mhm.
the first thing pandemic did is physical movement restrictions, and that's where wherever there was a physical customer touch points required, that's where we saw technologies being used. Onboarding is obviously one of them. KYC is another area, and that's where we see the technologies which are being developed for last few years started finding their way into deployments, like lots of image recognition and cognitive services, lots of machine learning based technologies. So these are the things which we see most of the banks, including the banks in Philippines, they have started adopting. So they actually first forwarded the whole digital adoption because
Mhm.
of the pandemic and physical movement restrictions.
Okay. Thank you for your inputs, Basu. And one of the questions that I would also like to ask our panelists is a lot of consumers shifted from traditional to digital banking, but here in the Philippines, a big part of the population is still unbanked. So, how do you plan to reach these unbanked or underbanked individuals? Sir Mon, please go ahead first.
Okay, thank you, Jem. Actually, we really need to, for one, we need to make it easy for our customers, especially the unbanked, to be onboarded into the banking system. That's why
Mhm.
one product that we have is the Simple Savings Account, which
Mhm.
enables an unbanked customer, to open a bank account with really minimal documentation requirements, and also using our sign up app, which the eKYC is also powered by Dayon. We can
Mhm.
also reach customers in places where branches are not existing. So it's really bringing the banking facilities towards the customer rather than trying to get them into inside the branch, because sometimes, for especially for the unbanked, they are quite intimidated when they step inside the branch.
Mhm.
So we really want to get the branch to them using the technology tools that are available, eKYC, and also with the reduced documentation requirements that the BSP has enabled for us.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ramon. How about you, Sir John? Is this something similar that PBCom offers? Do you simplify your offering as well for the onboarding?
Well, uh, we I don't claim to be like psychic, but in 2019 we launched PBcom Mobile
Mm-hmm.
together with Exist. which allowed customers to download an app, onboard themselves in a few minutes, and immediately open an account. So became very useful at the start of the lockdowns because the service was already there, and it allowed us to expand our footprint without requiring people to go to branches. And we worked also with the regulators because the regulators have been very progressive in allowing banks to open accounts with minimum documentation. So unbanked customers with no government IDs, for example, can open a basic deposit account, and customers can choose to bank without really having to present all these documentary requirements that were required in the past. Going forward, when now that everyone's opening a PhilSys ID account, right? They're getting PhilSys IDs.
Yeah.
It'll make it much easier to banks to onboard customers with less restrictions.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir John. How about you, Sir Mike, and the technical aspect or perspective, since both our heads from PBCom and Robinsons Bank have mentioned onboarding. Even Basu mentioned that onboarding is actually one of the technologies that we can look or expect from our digital banks moving forward or post pandemic. How can we, as a technology provider, enable these banks in this venture?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Jem. I guess what is important before answering the technology part, I guess what is important to know really is that the unbanks, for me, in my opinion, are the traditional bankers, I guess, who are used to the traditional way of banking. And I guess those who are using the app, and I might be wrong, and you can correct me, John and Mon, regarding this in terms of the demographics of people using their mobile phones the way the way to bank and onboarding or mobile internet banking in general. I guess to be able to shift a big part of that and going to the technology part is to make sure that they are confident about the security of the application itself. I mean, using mobile banking as a way to do banking in the next uh, years to come, right? So, and it's the new way of doing banking because it's easy, it's more efficient, it's faster, and I guess more importantly, it has to be more secure than the way traditional banking is done. So, as a technology company, and having said that, as in exist, we want to make sure that when we build our software, security is part of it, especially for when we build banking applications. So there's a lot. The good news is there are a lot of ways to do security. So and a lot of ways to be able to predict threats around your security, around your infrastructure, and your organization in general. So and that's those are the things that as an organization what we can provide and help our partners.
Okay. How about you, Basu? Can you do you want to add more information as one of the technology guy and the panelists?
Yeah, so I would again just echo what John just said. Unbanked is people are unbanked because they could not provide an identification uh, document or something that nature. So to bring them under the formal banking channels, they need that identity document. So that's one challenge which is being addressed by the government and the regulators through PhilSys and others. But the challenge remains is even if you have a mobile banking apps to onboard a customer, we are working with a couple of banks in Philippines where there are northern islands where mobile connectivity itself is not there,
Mm-hmm.
or there are the users of those, they don't even have a smartphone, maybe a feature phone. So
Mm-hmm.
one side is the accessibility to the network so that those
Mm-hmm.
can be they can use an app and onboard.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is the device which they are using, which will help them. So it has to be a holistic approach. I agree that security is a predominant thing because we are
Mm-hmm.
talking about customer privacy data,
Mm-hmm.
but also we need to look for the whole ecosystem where not only the app but the network availability as well as the identification availability of identification is super critical for unbanked population. And that, I think that's why BSP has issued or issuing those digital bank licenses, which are comparatively leaner organizations and mobile or digital driven, so that they can reach out to those far flung corners of the country and get those people on the formal banking channel.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights. And later on, we'll be discussing more about security on our third topic. And I've seen that some of our attendees have raised questions. So, from Mr. Joseph Villordon, SVP of Digital Transformation of ICP, the question is as we move on to open banking, how do we ensure that we protect consumer data and prevent data breaches and cybersecurity threats that could lead to fraudulent transactions? Panelists who would like to answer the first question from Mr. Joseph Villardan.
Sorry, Jim, can you repeat the question? I think you were
Okay.
cutting off earlier.
Sorry.
I'm
The
sorry.
question,
Yeah.
sir, is as we move to open banking and moving banking services online, how do we ensure that we protect consumer data and
Mm,
prevent data breaches and cybersecurity threats that
mm,
could lead to fraudulent transactions?
Okay, thank you for repeating that, Jim.
Would you
Uh,
like
Well,
to
I
answer that question?
yeah, I think the answer has less to do with the tech because there's always going to be different tech tools and approaches to
yeah,
protect data and prevent
right.
security intrusions. But I think the overriding uh, item that will ensure this is legislation. Uh, there is a data privacy law in the Philippines, and it
Hmm, hmm.
supersedes banking regulations. So that is a stronger, I think, tool to ensure that data is protected.
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess in terms of technology, I think as John mentioned, there will always be tools available, improvements, enhancements, and to protect, to definitely secure data in general, not just for banking, I guess in general. So if you're in the software industry, if you're a software vendor, definitely what you'd like to be able to do is um, protect the data of your customers. And at the end of the day, it's those are consumer data. And there's a lot of ways, and I mentioned it a while ago, a lot of ways to make sure that happens, and depends on how you implement your system and what the vendors can provide you. And again, like I mentioned, that the good news is there's a lot of options out there. It all boils down on how you also want to be involved as an organization in defining how you would like your data to be accessed. And that's for me a very important part, because that would also define the types of tools that you'd like to implement in your organization. So if I understand it correctly, the one who asks is implementing digital transformation, and part of that process of doing digital transformation is talking to the whole organization, not just IT, but to the stakeholders of those different information and how they want to define security, because they might define it differently. And again, as I mentioned, depending on how each of those departments define their security um, guidelines, you then apply the necessary tools or frameworks around it. And basically, it's data governance and how you would like to access it, your data, how you'd like to manage it, how you like to consume it, how you like to define the access controls. So there are a lot of different ways um, to prevent those breaches to happen. From the from point A to point B, definitely you'd like to have that in place, meaning from your consumer side, accessing the application up to the back end side of to those who are providing the service has to be end to end.
okay, thank you very much, Sir John and Sir Mike. Mr. Joseph has a follow up question. So, his next question is as we simplify online transactions, how do we prevent the increase in fraudulent accounts and activities targeting banking consumers? So, Basu, would you like to answer the second question?
I think it is more in line with the first question, which Mike has already responded. So it's there is no dearth of security tools and applications. So every organization now needs to define a security policy, the privacy data privacy policy, so that each of these are addressed not only through government regulation but also through internal processes. Because not only this, but digital threats can come from any channels.
And
Because
yeah,
as you spoke about open banking, so banks are opening up their systems to external partners, so it can come from a super app. So,
mm,
what determines how you address is the resiliency of your system as well as a
right.
process governing the detection of this and immediately preventing it to happen again.
Okay, thank you, Vasu. A question from Mr. Edgar Laurente, one of the entrepreneurs an attendee to our event, is to each panelist, what is or are the main differences on the digital banking technology trends that you have right now versus the existing? How do you look on the banking trends in the next 5, 10, 20 years on your banking tech and security? So, Sir Mon, would you like to answer this question?
Um, okay, the way I read this is we're still talking of digital, so I guess this isn't a comparison between digital and traditional. This is more
Traditional.
on what,
Yeah.
yeah, versus the traditional. Well, obviously, the more we try to get to digitize and automate uh, banking transactions, so the customer won't have to go to the branch. I think that's the main goal really in digital banking technology. But even within the digital banking space, the fact that we are moving towards an open banking platform, so it's not just automating the banking process, but actually even enabling other non-banking apps to become or to enable their customer to manage their cash, to manage their payments. That I think is one trend that's already beginning to surface. So with that, how would I look at the banking trends in the next 5, 10, 20? For one, I don't think the physical branch will go away. There will always be people who would prefer the analog and physical interaction. But I also think that more and more apps that are not banks, shopping, travel, those types of apps will interface the banking system more so that their customers will be able to pay or to have access to their
Yep.
to their funds. So banking,
Yep.
there was a there was a quote I read, and I will paraphrase it, wherein banks will probably decrease, but banking will always be there. So there will still be physical branches, but I think more and more a banking app will be hidden behind other shopping or even travel apps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Mon, on answering that question. Sir John and the other panelists, would you like to add to the question?
Yeah. I guess, yeah. If I may,
Go, Sir Mike.
yeah, complementing what Mon said, I think in terms of consumer experience, in terms of how they bank, how they pay, how they transact, I guess it all boils down to the user experience, the ease of use, of the ease of banking, the ease of paying anywhere you are. And it's happening right now. It's not like it's gonna happen in the next 5, 10 years, 20 years. It's happening right now. It's more of how it will evolve from there. So and we're talking about institution understanding their customers better, institution understanding how they use it in order to improve again their experience, again their security, scaling their services across different markets, different other markets, like I said. So that integration itself, open banking, is something very exciting for me because it's exciting at the same time. There's a lot of regulation that has to happen as well around it, because you're opening basically a way to integrate with the bank, right? So I would imagine later on there would be a body, a committee that would define how this would happen. um, there would be a reference implementation on how it should be done properly across banks, and that hopefully it would enable better security. And I'm always um, highlighting that because for me right now that's the biggest challenge right now in terms of making sure that its security is always upfront, always priority feature of any internet application, not just banking. So, and I'm excited for open banking because it would potentially help um, increase security and improve security.
Yeah. Thank you, Sir Mike.
And
Actually, you answered the question of Attorney Rosel Perez Bariwan. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Actually, her question is, what will be the security steps as we embrace open finance?
mm, mm.
So somehow you were able to answer that.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of stages to it. You know. It all starts if of course if you're using mobile banks or any online application, it starts with how those systems were built, right? Uh, how they're built, how they're designed. Is security a priority? Is security front and center or just a secondary feature? How the infrastructure is set up and all those stuff. So in terms of IT, that's in terms of in the context of IT, that's definitely one of the areas that that are very important. And as in the banking organization, I would imagine how they would like to govern their data. So how would they protect their data, as mentioned a while ago? How do they would define that security, the guidelines, the protocols, etc.
Okay. So far, you've mentioned, I think the panelists mentioned that having your own policies and securing your data is very important. And data digital transformation does not involves actually the C level, your management down to the IT department and all stakeholders to be able to ensure that your data is protected and the data of the consumers are protected. And of course, there are several tools, technology that we can have in place to have the applications secure as well. And a question as well from Ms. Neri Reyes, a systems engineer of ANZ. What is your opinion regarding digital banking and cryptocurrency? Do you think Philippines will welcome the thought of converting or accepting cryptocurrency in the near future? So, any thoughts on this, or Mike?
I can't answer that in the context of the banks.
Mm-hmm.
Crypto definitely is, in the context of technology, is something really unique. That not that I'm skeptic personally about it, in terms of implementing it for our customers. I guess the question for me is the longevity of the concept itself. Though it, of course, obviously it has gained a lot of traction, a lot of followings, and there's a lot of usage for it. I don't know the statistics around it, if how much of businesses are adopting crypto as a way um, to purchase their goods or services. Um, but I'm just keeping it on the side, to be honest, to be really honest. And as an organization, it's something that it's always been discussed with some of our customers, but has not really taken off significantly. It's just discussions around it. Whether or not it would be adopted in the Philippines is really, I have no idea. I'm not sure if BSP is even considering it right now. I'm not really sure. I'm not
Okay.
even sure if it's regulated right now.
Thank you, Sir Mike. I want to hear from one of our panelists, banking experts, Sir John. What's your opinion about cryptocurrency? Is this something that banks in the future, or you can offer this as well in the future?
Well, cryptocurrencies today are is a very generic term. There
Mm-hmm.
are many cryptocurrencies, and
Yep.
the technology itself is sound because of the transparency.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is today we don't have a generally accepted cryptocurrency,
Yep. Yep.
meaning that both banks and these trading platforms recognize as
Right.
official. Meaning, and there is a dearth of regulation out there today, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but the regulators are working on exploring official government
Mm-hmm.
cryptocurrencies,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good thing because it gives it stability.
Yep.
Um, if you read the news, cryptocurrencies scare a lot of people, not because of the technology itself, but because it's unregulated and all these losses and hacks are happening
Right.
on the unregulated exchanges that are not being supervised properly. So it's giving it a bad rap.
Right.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so there are official trading platforms that are somewhat regulated, but it's not completely there. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is a lot of these regulated trading platforms are not local.
Mm.
They're
Yep.
either regional or global, and so enforceability at the local level is also a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's also quite difficult because if you're trading in a foreign cryptocurrency, you're limited by how much you can shift overseas and shift back if your money is peso
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of the
Mm-hmm.
regulation. So the government is working on it together with the financial institutions. There's even, I think, a couple of test cryptocurrencies that may become official locally,
Yep.
and that's a good thing because then it will give, I guess, the public confidence to accept this technology. Um, and going outside of cryptocurrency, I think um, the distributed ledger blockchain type technology, I think, has bigger promises of helping improve government. For example, land titling,
Yep.
vehicle registration. Um, they have exciting opportunities to use the tech to improve that because of the transparency. I mean,
Yep.
if you understand how blockchain works, the distributed ledgers work,
Yep.
diba, you will have a public record
Right.
of all the transactions.
Yeah.
Uh, the problem with the cryptocurrencies is, although there's a public record of the transactions, the exchanges allow uh, anonymity and false identities in the
Mm-hmm.
ledger. So that makes it difficult to take advantage of the transparency. So once
Okay.
we see some regulation, we'll see, I think, an improvement in the acceptability of cryptocurrencies.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Sir John.
may I ask, just for my curiosity, I think around back in 2018, I guess we were able to talk to some foreign um, investors who are looking at opening cryptocurrency trading in the Philippines. So and they told me during that time was that they were already applying for a permit in BSP. So at that time, I thought that BSP was already working on regulating it. I guess based
There
on
there
what John,
are there are approved uh, trading platforms in the
right,
Philippines, but
right,
it's still trading foreign crypto.
just foreign crypto, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But is it regulated by BSP? I mean, even if it's
No, they're licensed to trade
they're
because of
just
their current
licensed to trade,
to
right?
trade.
Okay,
Yes,
just on the trading part, but not necessarily on
because the
on
currency is
on
unregulated locally because they're not local
exactly,
currencies. Yes.
exactly, right.
You still can't use crypto
To
to
buy,
buy
yeah,
stuff.
for trade,
Yes,
right?
you
Yeah,
cannot like go to a shop and
yeah,
use
yeah,
your crypto wallet
yep,
to pay for
yep.
goods.
For goods, yeah.
And I
Okay.
guess that's why when it comes to crypto, as John mentioned, the technology is sound, the blockchain works, the whole concept works, but it's the whole anonymity behind it that's causing really discomfort. And we're seeing that in terms of fraud, yeah, online fraud, where funds that are obtained through the banking system are then siphoned to that space, and recovering it now becomes a challenge because we can't anymore because of the anonymity behind it. So that's actually the challenge with crypto. So crypto in itself, I think, is sound, but as a banking, as a currency, it might pose challenges, mainly because of my opinion, the anonymity behind it.
Okay. We're running out of time for the first topic. Thank you very much to our attendees for being participative and for raising your questions. Actually, we still have two more questions. We'll just extend the first topic for about 5 more minutes so we can answer the last two questions by our attendees. So for Basu, how should institutions use data technology to their advantage?
Uh, just going back to the previous topic around crypto, so uh, this starts from data itself. So there are few misconceptions around crypto. So I was hearing that. So there is a cryptocurrency and there is something called CBDC, which is the central bank digital currency. So Philippines and every central bank government, many governments are central banks are evaluating a central bank digital currency. We already have digital renminbi in China. Uh, but crypto as an investment asset class is already allowed in many markets, but not as a currency of trade, a currency of exchange. So that's where it is. Now, coming back to this question around the data. So,
Mm-hmm.
unless the banks or any other organization captures and analyzes the data, the life journeys of a customer or a life journey of a particular product and account, it is going to be very difficult to offer something unique to a customer because each one of us being pampered by the super apps and the Netflix of the world, we would like to have a very focused and fine-tuned approach towards our banking service requirements. And that's where every organization who is having customers, they need to analyze customers' behaviors and transactions and come up with a plan to how to address each of the life cycle stages of those so that whether it's a requirement for a car or a requirement for an insurance or anything else, that can be addressed at the proper time. So we see the whole digital is nothing but about data. It starts with data, ends with data. So unless the organization have a very strong data management plan, a data strategy, it is going to be very difficult because the competition is with the super apps and the digital banks who are building their whole ecosystem based on data and analytics.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's it for our first topic. We still have a few more questions, but rest assured that we will get back to you on our next topic. So thank you very much. Later on, we'll provide you our the highlights of the discussions that we have for topic one. So thank you very much, Basu, Sir Mon, Sir John, and Sir Mike. So I will now open the floor for our next topic, which is the readiness of the Philippine financial infrastructure. For this topic, let me call in the head of solution engineering, APJ of Yugabyte, Mr. Vish Panindra. And we also have the head of data governance of Maya, Mr. Melasho Valerio, and of course, Exist President and CEO, Mr. Michael Lim. Okay. While we're waiting for Vish and Melesho, okay, they're here now. Okay, hi Sir Vish and Sir Mel. Kindly open your cameras. Sir Vish. Hi Sir Mel.
Hi, good
Hi
afternoon,
Vish.
everyone.
Good afternoon, Mel. Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon,
Vish.
Mel.
Kindly
Good
open
afternoon,
your
Bish.
cam.
Good afternoon.
Good
Yes,
Good
thank
afternoon.
you.
afternoon. Okay, we're having an exciting discussion earlier for our first topic, but we need to venture to our next topic. And for the next topic, the first topic is infrastructure scalable and flexible enough to meet the needs of our Philippine banking institutions. So, what is your insight on this, Vish?
So I think one thing that I could think of is with COVID, it acted as an accelerator to move the societies from cash payments to digital ones. And especially now, if you see customers are expecting more digital and real-time intelligent services from their banks. And one of the things that I've observed was over the years, banks had spent millions of dollars on the on-premise technologies and the infrastructure, as well as skills to be able to operate that. And when you talk about infrastructure being able to scale on demand and have that flexibility, I think the point there is there has to be a migration strategy around moving into more of a cloud-based infrastructure. And generally speaking, that journey itself is not an easy one, right? It takes a lot of effort. And one of the most important thing is there is no such thing as one size fits all cloud strategy. So each bank has different systems that they use. The whole idea is how do you take some of these systems and move them over to cloud to get that scale and elasticity and flexibility is one of the critical things for the banks to innovate. Based on my conversations with various banks in Philippines, I think the journey to cloud has started with various banks. I think the key focus right now, at least based on my experience, is that most of the banks are looking at taking some of the customer experience applications and operations to cloud. And earlier during the conversation, a couple of folks talked about being able to use data effectively, right? I think the whole idea is it's not about just moving to an infrastructure that provides scale and flexibility, but it's about how do you utilize the data effectively to differentiate and provide personalized services is one of the key aspects, and that is where the banks can actually be able to innovate much faster, right? So it's really about agility, scale, speed. These are the things that actually helps banks to move faster. And that journey, in my opinion, has started. And basically, when you move into this kind of model where you have scale on demand and flexibility, it kind of even reduces the operating costs as such.
Okay. So the first step actually to ensure that they have a scalable environment or architecture is your suggestion first is to move on cloud or to migrate on cloud.
Yep. Yep.
And then,
In order to do that, you need to have some kind of a blueprint, like what is the objective or the outcomes of moving? Like where do we want to innovate, right? Because you don't
Mhm,
want, if you look into any of the banks, they've spent more than 2 decades or 3 decades in building some of these IT systems, right?
mhm,
There is no such thing as you move everything over one shot, right? You got to
mhm.
put a blueprint and put a journey around what applications, where would it yield better outcomes and business outcomes and value, right? Deliver value to overall customer experience and things like that. So
Okay.
it's about creating that blueprint and slowly migrating, taking that journey to move towards the cloud, provide better customer experiences, and innovate much faster.
Okay, thank you very much, Vish. And of course, aside from moving to the cloud, blueprint and knowing the data, or as mentioned earlier on the previous topic, data is very important as well. So, knowing what the customers really needs. So, this will be the basis for the innovations or the future innovations. For the next question, Sir Mike, what things needs to be in place to ensure that the infrastructure is scalable and flexible?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to echo what Vish said.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of making sure that it's scalable, secure, and all. And time to market is also important, definitely for banks to be able to offer digital services as fast as they can. I have to echo what Vish said that the fastest way to innovate is to consider cloud strategy. It might it doesn't need to be 100% cloud. There might be apps that you'd like to definitely be running on premise. So that has to be really planned out really
Mm.
well. But definitely, if you'd like to be able to offer digital services with those parameters that you mentioned
Mhm.
as quickly as you can, and relatively lower cost on over a period of time, and ROI over a period of time is quicker, or faster rather, then I would also suggest the same. Consider cloud as part of the of your strategy.
Okay.
And cloud
One.
has cloud. I'm sorry, Jen.
Go ahead.
For those who are still skeptic about cloud, I mean, it has matured exponentially over the years. I mean, I'm sure for those who have been hearing about cloud for decades, I guess. For those who are very skeptic about using it, I would really vouch for the use of cloud especially in relation to scaling and security. So I think that's one of the main item that has to be on top of the agenda on your mancom meeting, on your executive meeting, in considering that.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mike. How about you, Sir Mel? Do you agree on with our other panelists, or do you have other additional inputs on this?
Yeah, definitely, because we also need to remember traditional banks or are having a lot of legacy systems. So those are the things that you need to put some roadmap or strategy on how you can be able to do some migrations, not only the data migrations but also the business migrations. And cloud will be the nearest, I would say, the fast or not at least the fastest way in order to address those things, because we do have right now the ISO 220 is it 20022?
200
Yeah,
ASO2 and 2020.
yeah. So this might be one of the barriers for that compliance. So I guess there has to be a strategic roadmap in place in terms of how we can be able to resolve, or how we can be able to do a lot of modernization, innovation. And if we do have a legacy system still in our ecosystem, then that is one of the challenges that we have to really address.
Okay. So aside from migrating on cloud, one of the suggestions that you've mentioned, Sir Mel, is actually to modernize the applications. So all legacy applications should be modernized as well.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that
because
correct, Sir Mel?
definitely we need to have an integration between systems of or another new services.
Mhm.
If we do have a lot of barriers like the legacy systems, then
Mhm.
we cannot move faster and we cannot innovate quickly, and there will be a lot of challenges in terms of integration of new services. Then the time to market will also be impacted on that one.
Okay. Since there's a lot of actually financial services, fintech companies such as yours offering neobanks and new technologies to the market. The question is, how do you ensure that the architecture or your application won't crash? So can you provide some inputs on that?
Well, apart from getting the right talent, the right skills, we need to see what is your business requirements. What are the use case that you have? Because we don't just put an architecture that will fit everything. One of the key principles that I learned, or what we are currently doing, is put first the core fundamentals or the core system. Then any configurations, any modules, or any components that needs to be set up based on the different services will be outside of the core system, so that if there's a need for enhancement based from BSP compliance and all that, so you don't need to do a lot of overhauling in your core system, because that's the core system that's been there for that will last for quite some time. Then configuration will only be put outside of that one, so there should be a provision. So we do have a lot of APIs, SDKs, and all that. So you have to utilize those kind of technologies right now in the market.
Thank you, Sir Mel. As a technology expert, Sir Mike, can you share with us your inputs on how what is the ideal architectural diagram, or to ensure that an application is actually scalable, and it can match the front end or the innovations in the front office,
Mhm.
and that the application can actually perform as expected.
Hmm. Architectural diagram talaga, Jen.
Sorry.
No, well, definitely it all starts with how on good design.
Mhm.
On the onset, you have to have good design. You have to have a good grasp on the technology that you're using, right? Um, with the advent of application modernization, microservices, DevOps now with DevSecOps, so those
Mhm.
are things that has to be put in place properly,
Mhm.
not just for the purpose of saying that we have DevOps, not just for the purpose of saying we use microservices. It all starts with good design. So if you
Mhm.
have a bad design in the first place, even if you use microservices and you use it improperly, even if you have CI/CD in your as part of your process, if you're not using it properly, and that goes back to what Mel said: you need good talent, the right people to do it. Uh, definitely, if you have all those in place, DevOps, DevSecOps will definitely help in reducing those crashes, security vulnerabilities. You'll be able to monitor it properly. You'll be able to continuously develop doing without impacting other parts of your application. So for me, very basic, good design, the right talent, the very knowledgeable in technology that you are using. So there's a lot of R&D, a lot of training ahead,
Mhm.
before actually putting into practice. So there's a lot of investment there. But at the end, it would be all worthwhile, right? Because at the end of the day, you'd like to have a very robust, scalable, secured, and reliable system. And it takes time. It doesn't have an overtime. And it's like when you want to be able to migrate data, it's not just like you're copying one from A to B, right? There's a lot of things that has to happen in between to make sure that you have a successful migration and deployment and rollout of your system in a new infrastructure or a new system that you develop in a new infrastructure with a scalable with a team that can scale well when problems arises. So from people, from technology to process, those are things that has to be in place properly.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mike. So, just to wrap up the three suggestions provided by our panelists, so we have, of course, to ensure that you have a good design or good architecture at the start, and of course, you have to have the right skills or resources that can help you. Of course, you have to have the right skill, your application, and of course, a suggestion given earlier by our panelists as well is migration to cloud. But you have to have a well planned blueprint when you migrate to cloud, and of course modernizing legacy applications. We also have some questions from our attendees. So the first question is from Ms. Cora from Seedbacks. How do you see banks and e-wallets working together to reach the unbanked? What are the key factors for successful collaboration? I think question is best answered by you, Sir Mel. So please go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question because definitely for Maya, we do have now the e-wallets and the digital bank just launched a couple of weeks ago. So definitely one of the visions of the company is to really reach or financial inclusion, reach the unbanked, the underbanked, and all that. So we can, in terms of that collaboration, since we do have the e-wallets and we can be able to run a lot of analysis, how we can be able to make them include in the digital ecosystem, what are their customer behaviors, and in the absence of that digital or e-wallet, then definitely we do have a lot of satellites or merchants or enterprise that we can collect data with us, of course, with the compliance on the Data Privacy Act. So data is very critical here. just to ensure how you can be able to locate those customers, potential customers, or active customers, how we can be able to provide them a loyalty, making them loyal to the company or to the bank, and at the same time, how we can be able to provide them a personalized offering. So the key here is more of having or harvesting data and making sure that you have the right people to utilize and analyze those data, because they said data is the new oil, but it will not be of value if you will not be using it at the right time and at the right place and at the right opportunity. So just to summarize, definitely it still boils down with data, and at the same time having all those in place and right people and technology or platforms. One is to collect the right data, and number two is how you can be able to consolidate all those data and making sure that you are using that data for a specific purpose that is consented by the consumer.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Sir Mel. And how do you see the relationship between e-wallets and traditional banks? Of course, they coexist, right?
You mean traditional or digital banks?
Traditional banks. How do you see the banks and e-wallets working together, sir?
Traditional banks definitely what they are currently doing is having a lot of integration or collaboration with
Mhm.
the e-wallets, and they do have their payment ecosystem already. So I don't think that they can now be called just a traditional bank, because there are a lot of innovations going on.
Mhm.
And one of the things is, of course, having the mobile banking. Then becomes their all those savings and all that. They really utilize the technology and platforms that we have. So definitely, in terms of collaboration and integration, it has there's always a seamless services or innovations going on. So I would say there will be a lot of new services and products that will be coming both for the traditional and e-wallet.
Oh, thank you very much, Romel. A question from Mr. Joseph Villordan from ICCP. How will digital banking reach out to the non-smartphone users in the provinces and in the remote areas? Anyone from our panelists? Sir Vish, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, so in my opinion, there are multiple ways to reach out to the rural customers who are not really having smartphones and things like that. So one of the things that I could think of is again going through something like a voice-based recognition, where if you are submitting certain things by email, or even if there is no email, just voice-based recognition through which you kind of help in creating the accounts, or maybe with something like an SMS or an OTP kind of thing, through which you enter the OTP for a customer to kind of open the account based on the phone number and the credentials that is provided. So there are ways to do this, but I guess as the technology is evolving faster, I think even consumers are moving towards going into a more smartphone era and things like that. So I think for those who are still not wanting to go into that smartphone and things like that, I think that's where in the earlier session there was a talk around maybe there will be still banks available, physical banks, where you could go in and do certain things and use your traditional phone to be able to do certain transactions through voicemail, through voice IVR or things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Vish. And earlier, there were some questions that were not yet answered by us. So I'll just raise this. This was a question raised by attorney Rosel Perez. She asked, what will you give as an advice that regulatory should focus now in order to adapt to the changing environment of digital banking? Sir Mel, would you like to answer this question? Do
Um,
you?
Yeah, definitely. The hot topic right now is the data privacy because
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the things that are really going through right now is once you fill up an application form, you will receive a lot of messages coming from different places, right? So
Right.
sometimes it was already been abused, but sometimes it also becomes an advantage to the consumer. But if the consumer is really keen on that one, so there has to be someone to be penalized, right? So in terms of
Right.
that one, we need to really ensure the DPOs or our infosec to be very strict and aware on what has needs to be done and implemented in the organization. So there's a lot of workarounds, but most of the time we need to make sure that we really abide with the principles of data privacy. Where are we going to use that one in terms of the promotional campaigns, in terms of providing a lot of product launches? We put a lot of terms and conditions, and we need to be strict and at the same time concise and clear with the terms and conditions because I myself is guilty also that for 3 pages terms and condition, I'll just scroll it up,
Mm.
right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually,
Yeah,
you
I
will
do
get
that.
stuck
Yeah.
on that
That's.
one. So it's not a matter of putting 100 words, 500 words, but you have to be clear and concise what needs to be done, what needs to be explicitly implemented. So I think the regulators needs to, to make sure those are being implemented, and for us in the organization, especially we are working with data, needs to really understand what are those policies are.
Right.
Thank you, Sir Mel. I think the question raised by Sir Joseph is similar. Let me just read his question. In light of the publicized fraudulent transactions and data breaches experienced by some top banks in the Philippines, and as corporations move their account from traditional to digital banking, will banks be open to providing visibility of their technology, policy, and governance protocols with regards to cyber and data security to their corporate consumers or customers to provide a level of assurance that both their corporate accounts and employee payroll accounts are secure as they move to a digital banking? So, would you like to answer that, Sir Mel?
Um, my opinion here is that definitely there's always a high level roadmap or strategy to provide what needs to be done because say for example for data governance or for data security or data privacy, we already have the operating model, we already have the framework that can be implemented across the organization. But apart from that, based from that framework, it has to be modeled or configured in a way how your organization or business model works because no model can fit all. So there should be a configuration on how this can be implemented to the organization. Now, in terms of those data breach and all that, my thinking for that is once you have that kind of experience, so but definitely we don't want to wait for that experience. For those organization that has this experience, I can guarantee that they now have a very strict policies within that one because they have experienced that
Mm.
one, but sad
Yeah.
to say they experience it the hard
They
way.
experience
So
it.
for us
Yeah.
that for us that not experiencing that one, but we learned it already based from what we have
Mm.
read or what we have
Yeah.
informed. So definitely, everyone else in the organization will always look for a strategy, whatever technology or framework that you will be doing. In terms of sharing that one, I think it's okay in terms of the high level. I could see there's some association between the banks, between the insurance or any financial sectors what they would want to align on the standard, especially for the regulators, right? For the BSP, we do have already those framework. It has to only be explicitly implemented to the organization based on your business models or based on the business that you have. So the guidance is already there, the reference is already there. It's a matter of how the people will implement that one depending on the organization.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mel. How
Mm.
about you, Sir Mike and Vish? Would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I guess for me, in my also in my personal opinion, it's it regardless of whether or not you be transparent about your policies, the technology you use, um, there will always be there will always sadly um, events that would happen that hackers would just try, just challenge your infrastructure, challenge your system. So um, we will always, in terms of technology itself, there will always be a way to try to capture that early. Capture early, monitor it, um, use the technology again to be able to track it out and be able to block it, etc., and all those stuff, right? At the end of the day, as Mel mentioned, and I totally agree with that. It's just unfortunate that someone else experienced it first and experienced it really hard, very tough times for them. But um, I agree with him that right now they might have the best security infrastructure right now after experiencing that, right? So it's just unfortunate you have to experience it in the real world. Um, the best way, and it's a best practice, to be able to mitigate that in the future is to be able to have early detection, early tests, knowing how it was attacked, how hackers were able to penetrate your security framework or your platform. You'll be able to place a lot more stricter protocols in your organization, in your IT, in different parts of your organization, making sure that would not happen, and more, right? And you'll be able to look more forward in relation to more attacks in the future. It's just unfortunate that there will always be attacks, right? It's now a matter of how do we now react to it. And of course, everyone wants to react proactively by putting in all the necessary tools, again, frameworks around your system to make sure that from development to deployment, during testing to production, you have all the security measures that you have in place as an organization. And hopefully it would be enough and to be able to counter any attacks.
In,
Okay.
in,
Sorry, Vish. Go ahead.
no, I was about to add one thing to what Sir Mike had said. Right. I think as we move into more distributed application architecture, where it's going to be more of a distributed design, I
Mm-hmm.
think security comes, like, generally in a traditional world, security comes towards the tail end. And with this new distributed architecture or a cloud native architecture where you're kind of decoupling your code or the application that is being built with the infrastructure, I think going into things like being able to write, inject, like, security as a code, and being able to spun out, like, again, going back to the earlier question around adoption of a cloud native architecture, like infrastructure as a code, security as a code, and being able to adopt some of the more open source technologies to be able to drive that innovation. And lastly, being able to take this data, find insights, patterns, to be able to identify this in the early stages is something that would help. But again, that being said, I kind of agree. Unfortunately, there still will be threats, but again, the point is taking some of those data points and making your systems much robust to be able to handle some of these is the way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's it for the second topic. Thank you very much, Vish, Mel, and Sir Mike, for sharing your insights on our topic regarding the readiness of Philippine financial infrastructure. So let's now move on to our next topic: Today, the last topic is security in digital financial platforms. Actually, I've been hearing a lot about security since our topic one. And to officially open this topic, let me call in our panelists again from PBCom, the Chief Operations Officer of PBCom, Mr. John Howard Medina. Next is the SVP and Digital Retail Banking Group Head of Robinsons Bank, Mr. Ramon Abasolo. And of course, now we will now have the Regional Vice President, Southeast Asia of Dayon, Trilo Chen, and the Head of Solutions Engineering of Yugabyte again, Mr. Vish Panindra, and of course, the President of, and CEO of Exist Software Labs Inc., Mr. Michael Lim. Okay, hi guys. So, to start the topic regarding the security, the first question that was raised is during the pandemic era, a rise in digital fraudsters, hackers, and phishing was observed. How does the BFSI sector address this concern? Sir John, would you like to answer this question?
Well, the first thing that the banks did was to do an education campaign about phishing and protecting your credentials, because that's the first line of defense that the customers will have to do to protect their money. The banks, on the other hand, are required to put in the requisite security infrastructure to protect the customer's accounts. But if the compromise happens at the customer's login ID, password, et cetera, there's very little that we can do to prevent that, other than using AI to do predictive fraud analysis to see if that transaction is within that person's profile. But given a lot of our accounts don't have a long account history, it's difficult for the AI to create a predictive model for each customer. We only have very few customers that have more than 10 years worth of transactions with us. So that's the challenge. But that being said, a lot of what you see in the news really has to do with people being too trusting with people outside the banks. You get a text from somebody or some entity, and you share something, or you click on something that is sent to you by email. It's very easy for you to reveal information that will allow them to get access to your accounts. So that education campaign, I think, goes a long way.
Thank you, Sir John. And as you've mentioned, this is actually a responsibility between the user and the bank. So it's not a responsibility of the banks only, but users should also be vigilant in providing their sensitive information, especially for those individuals that they don't know. Okay. How about you, Sir Mon? Would you like to add more information on this?
Yeah, I agree with John that a lot has to do with educating the public, and this has always been a challenge of ours. Not really on the education, but we put a lot of controls in our systems, and the challenge really is how do you juggle security with the convenience for the customer. I remember when we started with putting OTPs. Some customers they didn't like the fact that they had to enter an OTP, but it's really the way that we can really protect the identity or the funds of the customers. We need to put all of these security controls, and I'm happy that our BSP is already, not only the BSP, but including the telcos have already begun realizing the risk when it comes to these phishing and smishing attacks. The BSP already are recommending, for example, that banks take out links in SMS and email, because that's the vector where these phishing attacks do happen. The customer gets an SMS, looks legit, and sometimes the way it works is that the SMS they offer, 10,000 pesos, or they
Mhm.
say your account has been compromised, click on this link, and they enter their credentials, and then that's it. It's if the fraudster gets your user ID and password, then at that point it's going to be very difficult for us to protect that. It's almost tantamount in the olden days when a customer would give your PIN or give their PIN to a stranger, an ATM card PIN. At that point, there's very little we can do. So really, a lot we take it upon ourselves to educate the customer. So when the customer gets all these SMS messages telling you don't do this, don't do that, I hope our customers realize that we're really trying to educate and prevent these types of frauds.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Mon, for sharing your insight. And actually, BS
Hmm.
Yeah, we lost you.
Yeah, I think we lost Jem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we lost Jem.
Maybe, yeah. Is there anyone from the organizers can take charge on hosting? Hmm.
Hi everyone. We just lost Miss Jem, and let's wait for a minute or two so she can go back with us.
While we are waiting for Jem to
Yeah.
get online, probably I would like to share some views. Commonly, what I've heard from Salman and from John, phishing attacks definitely are very common, right? And it is becoming more sophisticated with time. Hackers, use very proper languages. Even when SMS phishing attacks are sent, they use the names of the banks to make it show that
Hmm.
when customers receive them, they look very legitimate.
Hmm.
From one of the recent attacks with OCBC Bank in Singapore, we saw when hackers send these messages, they not even use OCBC's name, but the messages came as a continuous message to some of the previous messages. So
Hmm.
there was no reason for a customer to see that it is not legitimate. When they click on
Hmm.
it, and they went to the site, they definitely entered the username and passwords, and their accounts were taken over for
Hmm.
malicious transactions, and almost $8.5 million from various accounts were transferred to outside the country. Now the learning is right. While these accounts attacks are going up, username password is just a first line of defense, and what we as a vendor suggest to our customers is to look at a multi-factor transaction journeys. Not depend on one factor for authentication, which is username and password. So there are more powerful factors available. Biometrics could be one factor. And second, when these type of attack happens, the moment the banking transaction systems are pretty strong. At the moment see the transaction is coming from a non-trusted device, the moment it sees transaction is coming from a location which is generally not known as customer's location, there are ways to step up authentication, right? Not just let customers go with username and passwords, right? Step it up, get them to scan their biometrics, use their fingerprints, use their voice for second factor authentication, or even sending notifications on apps. So that step up authentication can help address that factor when somebody's email and passwords are compromised. Maybe now Jem is back, so probably I'll hand it over to her for a continuation.
Thank you, Trilogy. I'm sorry, I just got off. I got cut off earlier. By the way, in relation to the answers earlier regarding phishing and smishing, BSP released a memorandum number M20022-015, which urges banks to stop adding links in emails and SMS. So, what can we use as a replacement for this link? So, this question should will be addressed by Sir Mike Lim of Exist. Sir Mike.
Hmm. Well, it's not much so about what's the replacement, right? The whole point of, I guess, of that regulation is to counter any hacking or phishing, right? It's more than just um, how would banks or institutions would like to be able to provide information to their clients. So I guess it's and I totally agree with what John and Mon said. No, it's educating, and for me, I term it as awareness to the public about this types of potential attacks, right? So, however you'd like to provide information to your customers, to your potential customers, marketing and all. Um, Removing the links is one part of trying to minimize or reduce the potential hacking. Um, but I totally agree that creating awareness about all these things that are happening that in phishing creates a better way of controlling it. And it's like what John said, it's your first line of defense, right? There's so much you can do in your organization if the public won't follow certain guidelines or are not aware that these are potential hackers already trying to get their credentials, right? So for me, it's more of the awareness rather than how to replace it.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mike. Earlier, during the first topic, I'm not sure, Trilochan, if you're already on the event,
Yes. Yeah.
but a lot of the panelists mentioned that we're still looking on the onboarding solution, EKYC, as one of the innovations in the coming years. So, of course, one of the main concern during the discussions is the security for the onboarding. So, how can you share some insights on how we can make onboarding secure?
Definitely right. See, for any digital platform today, onboarding a customer is the first transaction which happens, and it is one of the most important transaction to happen, because if you don't have customers, you don't have business, right? So yeah, there's a lot of innovation which has gone in with the COVID situation we were in. There was a lot of push on that innovation, and unfortunately, we had technology which has made remote onboarding, or a customer onboarding or digital platforms without customers visiting branches made possible. The way it works is we look at customers' identity documents as one source of an identity, and then we try and wrap that up with customers' biometrics, matching the biometrics with the pictures on the ID cards. Then, going to your national ID systems. For example, in Philippines, we have Philsys coming in, doing a verification there. If banks are really interested and they want to see a little more background of these customers, there are a lot of those third-party databases available where you can do perhaps and sanctions check, adverse media checks. There's a lot more background checks which are available, and all of it works in an API mode. So while customer is going through his onboarding transaction, all these checks are happening at the background. So all in all, in a minute or less than a minute, you can do all of these checks at the background and still make sure the customer is able to onboard. Now, one very critical innovation which has come in is the liveness detection. So a lot of times we saw that people were not live when they were going through it. But now there are solutions where systems can detect it's a live person going through it, and these are certified ibeta level capabilities. There's level 1, level 2 certification which is available. This is from based on NIST guidelines and ISO standards, so there's a lot of trust in that. One, it definitely helps to prove it's a live person. Second, it takes care of risk involved from any sort of presentation attack, right? So where a digital picture is being used, or somebody is just using a photocopy of it, we can take care of a lot of those presentations attack involved. So with the presentation attack, the liveness with integration with various databases, integration with national ID systems, customers' biometrics, their ID documents, we can now create a very holistic, trusted digital identity which can be used for onboarding purpose. And that also takes care of all the EKYC checks behind the scenes.
Okay, so there's a lot of security, checkings of fraudulent IDs, a liveness check to make sure that the onboarding person is actually a person, not a machine, etc. So I think you've covered all of those already. Thank you very much, Trilo Chen. And we have a question from one of our attendees. So this question is for Sir Mon and Sir John. So do the banks proactively monitor entities and sites impersonating their website or emails and address them before they can do more damage to consumers? Sir John, you first.
Yes, yes, we do. That's part of our information security framework. We do a lot of proactive information security activities that try to detect, uh, malicious entities and threat actors. We have service providers that go into the dark web and see if there's any criminal activity that references not just us but the Philippine banks as well.
Thank you, Sir John. How about you, Sir Mon?
Yeah, and to that point, like even just almost daily, I get reports of possible password compromise.
Mm-hmm.
I do get reports from our security guys and saying this user ID, their password has been compromised, and sometimes the report will also show me what was the password that was entered. So we have to we start doing controls there, like we call the customer, we block the customer, we force the customer to change their password. So we are very vigilant about it. We do have the same controls that John mentioned. We get reports showing copied websites, spoofed websites that show our brand, and we
Yep.
issue takedown messages
Right.
almost immediately. The challenge though is, of course, very well know just by giving a takedown, it doesn't happen
Mm-hmm.
automatically. So yes, banks do take this thing very seriously. I saw in the web that we're not there are criticisms that the banks don't take this seriously. Believe me, we do.
Hmm.
We spend sleepless nights trying to address these things, and it's really a pain. But we have to do it because we want to protect our customers. So yes, we do take it very seriously.
Thank you very much, Sir John and Sir Mon. And I think one of the questions that were not answered earlier is this was raised to Sir Mel earlier, but this question is actually for banks. So, in light of the publicized fraudulent transactions and data breaches experienced by some top banks in the Philippines and as corporations move their account from traditional to digital banking, will banks be open to providing visibility on your technology policy and governance protocols with regards to cyber and data security to their corporate customers to provide a level of assurance that both their corporate accounts and employee payroll accounts are secure as they move to digital banking platform? Sir John, your thoughts on this?
Yes, we are part of our corporate governance disclosures, our risk policies, and our risk appetite and stands. However, we do not go into detail as to the measures we take to protect our customers and their information assets. Those are very tactical details that change on a day-to-day basis, as Mon knows. We adjust to the threats, but we are at the end of the day governed by our risk management policies, which are publicly disclosed.
Yeah. The challenge we also have there is we can't give away too much because then
Hmm.
the hackers would know how to circumvent it. So again, that's the challenge we have to juggle.
Okay, thank you guys. And for I'm not sure if Vish is still on the call. Vish, okay, he's having some technical concerns. So, in terms of infrastructure, what are the security measures that can be implemented, Sir Mike?
Sorry, the question is in terms of infrastructure.
Yes, sir. For the infrastructure, what are the security measures that we can add?
Mm. Yeah, well, definitely. Like I mentioned a while ago, there's a lot of options. It depends on how your infrastructure is set up. It really starts in your own backyard, right? So you have to know how your infrastructure is set up and what are your options based on that, the technologies that you're using and such. Um, so there's a lot of um, current technology in terms of infrastructure. And as we mentioned a while ago, cloud infrastructure is a very secured way of trying to do digital banking services for your banks. And if you really want to innovate, you can use that. If you want to use your current infrastructure and implement digital banking around it, you really have to do your own part in basically it's an inventory of what you have, right? So you have to really list down all the things that you have in place, whether or not they're legacy or they're not supported or they can be integrated with the modern security applications. Those are the things that has to be uh, taken. You have to list down and make sure that you have the basics in place. And again, there are a lot of options there. So one company comes to mind is HashiCorp, so you can check that out. They provide they provide infrastructure security really well. They have I think they have this application called or this system called Vault, and which I think VMware has that as well. So again, it all starts in your own backyard. See if your infrastructure is ready for that kind of setup, and start from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Mike. So to wrap up the discussion for the topic three, you've mentioned earlier that it's very important to inform the public about the different security or what not to click, what to do when your account has been compromised, etc. And it's also important as well for the users to know that security is not only the responsibility or securing your account is not only the responsibility of the banks, but also the security of the users, since your own data should not be given to any other user. So do not click or think before you click. Okay. And aside from that, other information that was shared is there are a lot of tools in the market that we can add, as mentioned by Sir Mike. We have HashiCorp. We have other tools as well in the cloud providers that we can add to secure the infrastructure. Trilochan also mentioned that there are several securities that can be added when you are doing EQYC or onboarding. There are several technologies in place as well. So, do you have other words before we end this webinar, Sir Mike, and our panelists?
Well, I just like to thank our fellow panelists for joining us today and for all those wonderful insights. And thank you again for supporting our event. And hope to see you all guys in person soon.
Okay. Sir Mon, would you like to say some words before we end the call?
First of all, thanks to Exist for inviting me here. It's always been a pleasure joining these events, and I hope the audience did learn a few things from us. So thank you, Mike and Jim, for inviting me here.
Thank you, Sir Mon and Sir
Likewise, Mark.
John.
Yeah, thank you as well to Exist. Exist has been a trusted partner for many, many years. They have helped us on our digital journey. And I think today we were able to, I think, answer some of the lingering questions that our audience had. If there are any questions that you think we didn't answer, I think some of the contact information of the panelists will be available to you. So you can reach out to us directly or via Exist if you want your questions answered. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Sir John. How about you, Trilochan?
Yeah, thanks a lot to the existing for having me on this platform. Thanks to all the fellow panelists. It was lovely being here, hearing everyone. Just my last few comments would be right. Generally, what we have seen in the industry, the OTPs are still sent on SMSs. SMS technology is almost 3 decades old. It hasn't kept with the security which we need today. So, that sending OTPs over SMS has known vulnerabilities. Better way is to send it via the native apps. That's a little more secure. Second, username password cannot be the line of defense, right? We have to look forward and design multi-factor authentication journeys for customers, and these journeys depends upon the risk it carries, right? Somebody just logging in to check in his account, yes, username password is fine. The moment they have to do a transaction, a high value transaction, they have to change address, they have to register new soft tokens. These are all very highly sensitive transactions, and a step up authentication is needed. So we have to get to a level where we have zero trust principles implemented in any and every transaction going on. And from the on perspective, I can help explain a bit more if somebody has any more question, how we can help customers with multi-factor technologies, how we can help bring in biometrics to the mix so that the user experience is not compromised, and at the same time we make it sure that each and every transaction happening on the digital platforms is highly secure. That's my last 2 words. Happy to be involved in any follow-up discussions. Anyone have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Happy to have any follow-up calls after this.
Okay, thank you very much to all our panelists, Mike, John, Mon, and Trilo Chen, and to all our attendees. Please expect that to receive a digital transformation kit from Exist. So the digital transformation kit holds all the information of our panelists, the discussions that we had, the banking maturity level, of course, the solutions that Exist provides, and please expect a call from our trusted account executive, Justine and Sam, to set an appointment with you and, of course, to answer some of your questions that were not answered at this event. Sir Mike, any parting words before we officially close the event?
Well, again, thank you for to all the organizers for putting all this together. Again, thank you for all the to all the attendees. Thank you for your time, and hope you learned a lot. And as mentioned by our fellow panelists, if you have additional questions, just feel free to contact us to through the emails that will be provided by Jen. Thank you again, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Sir Mike. And again, this is Jem, your moderator for the day. And thank you very much for all of the attendees and for all those who had joined us online. So, since we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So, thank you very much, everyone. And again, we will be sending our digital transformation kit, and we'll be reaching out to you to answer all of your questions that was not addressed on this event. Thank you. Have a nice day, guys. Bye.
2001, we pioneered open source here in the Philippines with over 2 decades of experience, over 150 software developers.
We do a lot of application modernization work, transforming the legacy systems into a more modern, more scalable, more flexible systems that are more future-proof.
At Exist, we help our clients in their systems selection and their digital implementation of their digital strategy by way of doing consulting and innovative technology solutions. We bring to the table a unique, insight, a different perspective, and create value for our clients long term, who regard us as their innovation partners. Industries such as banking and finance, healthcare, and retail, together with the client, actually do innovative stuff, new stuff to offer to the market.
Why companies would choose us, I would say that we strongly value our customers, treat them as partners, and as such we take great pride in being able to deliver quality software to our clients.
Over the years, we've managed to also help in terms of being able to develop as well as exit certain companies using open source software.
We've been around 18 years, so we have a very good amount of experience in terms of this type of business.
A distributed engineering network wherein we're able to build software 24-hour clock.
We will not let you down if you choose us.